Shalom Israel, first and foremost, I want to say all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of the house of David. Salutations to you brothers throughout the four corners of the earth, teaching the truth in righteousness and sincerity. To you Israelite foreigners, come back home to the truth. To those that passed away, serving the Lord, the dead in Yahweh Shai shall arise first. All right. This story right here is very big. You know, you could tell something's very big when people outside of the Israelite community is sharing it. This is all over social media right now, because even Jake know that this could lead to some serious shit. So to begin with, U.S. airstrike kills top Iran general Qasem Soleimani at Baghdad airport. Soleimani's death could drastically increase tensions with Iran, which were heightened by the New Year's attacks on the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad. So it says the United States killed a high-profile commander of Iran's Security Quds Force, the Defense Department said late Thursday. At the direction of the president, so Trump ordered this, the U.S. military has taken decisive defensive action to protect the U.S. personnel abroad. The department said in a statement announcing the death of Qasem Soleimani, a commander of Iran's military forces in the Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and elsewhere throughout the Middle East. All right. Now, this is very important because this is a very top guy. I believe he was like potentially one of the top two in command in Iran. This is very big. And it says a decisive defensive action to protect U.S. personnel abroad. So in other words, it's kind of like, it kind of seemed like they didn't know for sure if there was if the U.S. personnel was in danger. You know, it's not like they were bailing them out. It says defensive action, decisive defensive action. So it's like you're not protecting them. You're kind of, I don't know. Well, you're gonna see as you read why I'm kind of confused about it. The deadly airstrike will raise tensions between the U.S. and Iran, which were already heightened by the New Year's attacks on the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad. Another man, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, said to be the deputy of the militias known as the Popular Mobilization Units and a close advisor to Soleimani, was also killed in the airstrike near Baghdad's airport, according to Iraqi television reports. So in the Middle East, this news is spreading like wildfire. The PMU tweeted that Al-Muhandis and Soleimani were killed in their vehicle when their vehicle was hit on the road to the airport. In the past, the United States has credited Soleimani's militias with combating a U.S. enemy in Iraq, the Islamic State. So where have we seen this before? The U.S. trained and armed the Taliban, and then, Salat, all of a sudden, the Taliban becomes a enemy. All right, the Taliban became an enemy. So it's the boogeyman theory. Just like Bin Laden used to be associated with the United States. Saddam Hussein was an ally to the United States at one point. So it seems like there's a constant same fucking narrative that the white man has, Esau, that Esau has with this whole thing of, oh, this guy was our friend and then he became an enemy. This guy was fighting against ISIS. That's what the Islamic State means. But anyway, reading on, Soleimani's Quds Force was a division of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, widely believed to support many Iran-backed terrorist groups such as Hezbollah. So basically, they were fighting against the so-called Jews. You see how now they're tying in anti-Semitism? Hezbollah is, basically a terrorist organization that is, pretty much they're one of the people that pretty much when something happens in the Middle East to Israelis, they're the ones that are accused of it. This strike was aimed at deterring future Iranian attack plans. So it didn't say, avenging or stopping a current attack plan. This, remember when I said earlier about the decisive defensive? So it says this strike was aimed at deterring future Iranian attack plans. The Defense Department said in its statement, the United States will continue to take all necessary action to protect our people and our interests wherever they are around the world. Now remember, when they say our people, they're not talking about us. Black, Hispanic, Native Americans, we're not included in our people there. The Pentagon said Soleimani had been actively developing plans to attack U.S. diplomats and service members in Iraq and elsewhere throughout the region. His death comes after rioters tried for 2 days to scale a fortress-like walls at the United States' largest embassy. They retreated under a show of force from the Pentagon. 100 Marines were airlifted into the compound, and about 700 more Army paratroopers are expected soon in Kuwait from a global response force based at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So this is some real life Call of Duty shit. Earlier, Self-Defense Secretary Mark Esper threatened a preemptive strike against the Iranian militias if there were any renewed attacks against the U.S. personnel or interests in Iraq. Now, this is interesting because it says preemptive strike, but then it says if there were any renewed attacks. Do you see how this contradicts itself? If there are attacks, then the preemptive strike would not be preemptive. Preemptive means you're basically you're the one starting. You're the one that attacked first. It says the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff told reporters that attackers would run into a buzzsaw. So they said basically we're gonna kill all you motherfuckers if you try to attack us. The U.S. strike comes amid heightened tensions between the United States and Iran over rocket attacks in Iraq that U.S. officials had blamed on Iranian-backed forces, as well as the attempted breach of the embassy compound in Baghdad. So you see how the USA is pretty much going to be looked at as the bad guy here, because to them, they're just, rioting and fighting and shit. But, based on what I'm reading, nothing that they were doing called for an airstrike. Like, do you know what an airstrike is? Like, you're killing, you're literally going into the country and like dropping bombs and shit, killing multiple people. When you do an airstrike, there's no way to guarantee you're only killing the actual bad guys, the so-called bad guys. You don't just hit your target, you hit your target and everything around it. All right, so reading on, the conflict at the embassy occurred after U.S. fighter jets struck weapons depots in Iraq and Syria that the United States said were linked with a group called Kataib Hezbollah, which it blames for attacks on bases of the U.S.-led coalition fighting ISIS in recent months. So it says the conflict at the embassy occurred after U.S. fighter jets struck weapons depots in Iraq and Syria. At least 25 militia fighters were killed in the airstrikes. But it doesn't tell you who else got killed. What other people, could have been affected by these airstrikes. The strikes followed the death of a U.S. contractor who was killed on December 27th in a rocket attack on an Iraqi military base in Kirkuk that also hosted coalition forces. Several U.S. service members were also injured. The Defense Department said in announcing the strike on Thursday night that Soleimani had orchestrated attacks on coalition bases in Iraq over several months, including the December 27th attack that killed the contractor. He also approved the attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad that took place this week, the Defense Department said in the statement. Now, if you're looking at it from the Arabic point of view, and you look at, America's attacking us, and you look at America, you're like, oh, this country full of faggots and, women being taken serious as presidents, like all the weakness that America shows that's contrary to the way, the Arabs live and the way even our ancestors lived, We didn't have all of this faggot shit. This is an outwardly faggot society. Basically sodomite, immoral. But it says Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif called the U.S. action an extremely dangerous and foolish escalation. So, why are y'all doing all this for this little, relatively little? The U.S. bears responsibility for all consequences of its rogue adventurism, Zarif wrote on Twitter. Iran is likely to retaliate with terrorism and cyber attacks, said Norman Rule, 34-year-old CIA veteran who oversaw national intelligence policy on Iran before he retired in 2017. How do you retire at 34 years old? But anyway, so you see what this does is now they're likely to retaliate with terrorism and cyber attacks. Roulet said in a telephone interview that the U.S. move puts the United States and Iran in a confrontation unlike any other since the hostage crisis in 1979. So now it's beef. I believe it is highly likely the U.S. would not have undertaken this action unless it believed doing so would have prevented the loss of American lives, Roulet said. So they feel they were saving American lives, but they were destroying the hell out of Arabic lives. American officials are fully aware of the consequences such an action would produce. So they basically say, hey, we're going to put our people at risk. We're gonna save lives here, supposedly, but we're gonna put the whole nation at risk, the whole world. The former head of Iran's Islamic Military Regard Corps, Mohsen Rezai, vowed a strong revenge against the United States. This is Iran here. We ain't talking Iraq. We're talking Iran. Early Friday, the State Department urged Americans to leave Iraq immediately. That's now. That's today, early Friday. Trump has not appeared to comment on the strike, but he tweeted an image of a U.S. flag with no text. So we're just throwing it in their faces. We're just throwing not us, but America's just throwing shit in people's faces like, oh, see, America the Great, America the Great. And they're going to be like, their mentality is going to be like, oh, we're going to show America how great we are or how great they are. It's like when you play football and you do too much celebrating, you're taunting the other team. You're like, oh, yeah, rubbing it in their face, basically. Earlier this week, when asked about the possibility of war with Iran, Trump said, I don't see that happening. No, I don't think Iran would want that to happen. So you're already basically saying, fuck them. I don't think they really bought that life, that type of thing. I want to have peace. I like peace. And Iran should want peace more than anybody, Trump told reporters at his New Year's Eve event at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. So you over here chilling and shit, ordering people to die. Yeah, that's not going to fly too well if you're in the Middle East. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, a member of Foreign Relations Committee, tweeted, Soleimani was an enemy of the United States. That's not a question. The question is, as reports suggest, did America just assassinate without any congressional authorization the second most powerful person in Iran, knowingly setting off a potential massive regional war, Murphy said in the tweet. Senator Marco Rubio, Republican from Florida, also a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, tweeted that the United States and Trump exercised admirable restraint while setting clear red lines and the consequences for crossing them after what he said were repeated attacks by the Revolutionary Guard. Iran's Quds force chose the path of escalation, Rubio. So they're basically saying he started it. They are entirely to blame for bringing about the dangerous moment now before us. Senator Ben Sasse, Republican from Nebraska, a member of the Intelligence Committee, said in a statement, "This is very simple. General Soleimani is dead because he was an evil bastard who murdered Americans." Sasse said, "The president made the brave and right call." Brave for who? Senator Tom Cotton, Republican from Arkansas, said in a statement that Soleimani masterminded Iran's reign of terror for decades, including the deaths of hundreds of Americans. But wait a minute. It couldn't be for decades because ISIS ain't that old, and he was fighting against ISIS, right? Tonight, he got what he richly deserved. So that's like your man getting shot and somebody saying that's what he get. You know the Arabs is pissed, man. You know Iran is pissed the fuck off right now. And all those American soldiers who died by his hand also got what they deserved, justice, Cotton said, adding that America is safer with the Quds commander dead. The Trump administration announced in April that it was designating the Revolutionary Guard a foreign terrorist organization, which is the first time the United States had used that designation on part of another country's government. Since then, there have been several tense incidents involving the United States and Iran, including one in June when Iran shot down a U.S. surveillance drone that the Revolutionary Guard said had entered Iranian airspace. U.S. Central Command said the aircraft was in international airspace. So conflicting stories. The aircraft was in international airspace or in Iran's airspace. I would tend to believe Iran in this case. The Trump administration also blamed Iran for an attack in September on oil sites in Saudi Arabia. This is American interests. All those times that I just read that America's trying to protect its interests, this is the interest, the oil, which prompted the United States to deploy military forces to the Middle East that Esper said at that time would be defensive in nature. How is it defensive if you're blaming them for attacks on oil sites? Al-Muhandis, the militia official who was killed Thursday, had been accused of plotting attacks on the United States since the 1980s. He was convicted in absentia and sentenced to death by Kuwait for his role in the 1983 attacks on the U.S. and French embassies in Kuwait, in which 5 Kuwaitis were killed. The Treasury Department cited Al-Muhandis' role in the embassy attack in naming him a specially designated national, part of a list of terrorists subjected to U.S. sanctions. That designation also said he took part in an assassination attempt on the Emir of Kuwait in the early 1980s. All right, so that's the whole article. Very long article, took quite some time to read, and it's a credible news source, NBC News. It's a credible, reputable news source. All right, but pretty much that's what it is. You know, we're headed into you know, or I'll put it this way: this is the building blocks for World War II. I'm not gonna sit here and say we there right now, but we're pretty much there. You have to remember that the United States, Iran is not alone. Iran is not alone, and you know, Russia backs Iran, and that this could potentially be it. You know, and I'm going to go into one scripture, Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. When you read the scriptures, you have to be very precise. When it says, O virgin daughter of Babylon, that's not talking about the actual Babylon. The virgin daughter of Babylon is the United States. Now you read Psalms 137, and it pretty much explains that. Sit on the ground. There is no throne. So sit your ass on the ground. You're not going to be in power anymore. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Because people really in America think it's sweet. You know, you have a terrorist attack here and there that kind of reminds you that it's not sweet. You have people, domestic terrorists. You don't realize the power of this type of war going up against Iran, which is a superpower over there in the Middle East, which is backed by Russia. And Germany and France has never been too fond of the United States either. Germany and France hasn't been too, cool with the United States. So it says, take the millstones, grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. What's this talking about? America. Well, the next verse is going to explain it. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. All right, so this is the Lord saying to America, listen, I'm coming at you, but not before your nakedness is uncovered. And what did we just do with this article? We dissected it and saw the hypocrisy and the lies in it. So we really don't know the exact truth and what really happened. We just have a better idea of the lie. And we can dissect that. It says, as for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. That's Yahushua. It says, sit thou silent. So basically, shut the fuck up. And get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. You know? I was wroth with my people, Israel. I have polluted mine inheritance and given them into thine hand. Thou didst show them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. Very, very grievous slavery that we went through here. And thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it. So in other words, America has never been attacked on American soil by a foreign invader. Unless you want to count, what's that called? Hawaii. What was that? Pearl Harbor. But Pearl Harbor was actually, they allowed that to happen. If you know the history of Pearl Harbor, 9/11, of course, was an inside job. Pearl Harbor, the day that it happened was the day that American troops were told that there was no threat. I wonder why. Therefore, hear now this, thou that are given to pleasures, because that's what we are in America. We're given to pleasures. We're not, people in the Middle East, they don't have these luxuries of pleasures and going around being gay and happy and shit like Americans do. Eating whatever the fuck they want, you know what I'm saying? Like Americans do. Playing video games and shit. Their life is constant war. They're not like America where we're given the pleasures. We're sitting here, even brothers in the truth, we're doing better financially than a lot of people over there. For us to talk about we catching hell, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am and no one else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. So there's going to be a lot of death and destruction here in America. They shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. So America basically has been wicked, and that's basically a way of life in America. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. So the intelligence and the things, the scientific breakthroughs in America perverted Americans into thinking they're so great. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. So that's why you feel entitled you feel entitled to airstrike and destroy lives and kill people, right? Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. That's terrorist attacks. And mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off. The reason why I say that's terrorist attacks is because it says, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. When it's war, they're going to know who's going to war with them. But when it's a terrorist attacks, they got to figure out. That's why 9/11, well, most people blame bin Laden. But if you know where bin Laden was and shit, he was in an American hospital in France, I believe, when 9/11 happened. But he's blamed for this, for 9/11. All right, it says, and desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. So from when America was a young country, they were doing witchcraft. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if thou mayest prevail. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. So the Lord is saying, listen, let all your astrologers, all the witches and warlocks, let your masonry, your Freemasonry, and all the evil things that you guys do up top save you from what's coming. Behold, they shall be as stubble, the fire shall burn them. So the Lord's going to destroy them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shall they be unto thee, even with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter. None shall save thee. So there is no salvation for Esau. So with that, I'm going to say all praise. Well, you know what? I forgot. I'm not doing this at the beginning and end. It makes the videos longer for no reason. I'm just going to say shalom.